We are recording. So I guess looking at our pacing guide, the main part of the agenda today is to talk about the Pong app and the debugging activities. And I think the
hang on.
question
Hey,
came up
Sterling.
yesterday about the Explore task, which is coming up on Thursday, and I have some information for you on that. So we can talk about it. So the Pong app, this was another example of an animation app. I did get a couple of questions from folks through email. Nick was initially having trouble getting sound to play. One of the enhancements was to add sound to the app. I don't know, is Nick there? Nick, were you able to get it figured out? Let's see who's here. Did anyone else have a problem with sounds?
I wasn't able to get my sounds to work. I'm still having some trouble.
Uh-huh.
I posted my most recent update to the Google groups a couple minutes ago.
I thought one email I saw said you got some kind of sound to come out, but it was not quite right or something.
Yeah, sounds are not playing in full, or they are maybe overlapping or interfering with each other, and I can't get the mute to work yet.
So did anyone else incorporate sound?
I did.
I was able to incorporate sound successfully.
Yes, I was able to.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, did you run into any problems with it?
I initially tried to do a procedure for it, and that really didn't work for me. So I incorporated it into other event blocks.
I mean, I know there are some cases where I've had trouble with sounds, but in those cases it was always in some kind of loop where the sound, playing the sound was occurring in a loop. And that wasn't working. So Nick, what component are you using to play the sound? The sound component?
Yeah, I'm just using one sound component, and I'm changing which sound file it draws from.
Changing the source. Yeah?
And I've moved it around. I forgot where I left it last, but I've tried it in a variety of places.
So the others who were able to get it, you're also using the sound component? You would typically use the player for something like
I was using the
player.
check sound.change to determine whether it could play, I believe. Or no, that was for the muting part. So the other part, yeah, it's just the sound component. I mean, did you type in the names right, capitalization and everything? Because I know, like one of mine, the Tada, I left the T lowercase and it didn't work. And when I went back and capitalized it, it worked fine.
Maybe, hey, Nick, why don't you share your screen and we can just all take a look together, see if we spot anything. Is that possible?
Yep, just taking me a second.
So first, how about switching over to the designer view, just so we can see what the source property looks like over there.
I think I spotted the problem almost immediately when he was in the blocks format.
Okay. But, if you notice that the source there has no value assigned to it, was that deliberately, or you're planning to assign it the source in the blocks?
I've tried both combinations, but if you want me to assign a default, I can.
No, no, no. Well, yeah, it might not be a bad idea to assign a default. Okay. So then, yeah, let's go over to the blocks now. And was that Josh? You thought you spotted something?
Yeah. So if you can control minus for a sec, Nick, just to zoom out a little bit. Yeah, so right in the middle there, it says when ball.1 edge reached, it looks like you're calling set the sound one source to buzzer, but you didn't actually load that into the sound in the beginning on the designer side. So you just loaded like note.wave. So I think it's searching for something to set, but there's nothing in that just yet. Unless did you make a procedure that just is a call sound play? Yeah, it looks like you did.
Yeah, that's built into the sound component, the play part.
Oh no, and I'm not. And that's not what I'm looking at. I don't have mine up, but I built a procedure where you could set sound source to get source, and then you could tell the source at a different time what to play. I found a tutorial online that shows it, but it looks like right in front of like the very middle stack of locks there, it says set sound.source to buzzer.mp3, and there's no in the designer portion when the sound was set, you didn't load buzzer.mp3 into that sound.
Well, no, you should be able to. I don't think that looks like a problem.
Yeah, mine works and I didn't preload. My code actually looks for your edged reach in your, I think it's the collide when ball one. I mean, I have my blocks in a slightly different, order. But it's doing the same exact thing.
So can I ask folks?
Different is what's your global play that is false?
Probably just off screen here. I used a Boolean that would toggle back and forth when I want to start or stop the game.
Okay, so that's not muting the sound. Because it said to add that checkbox to mute the sound and unmute the sound. So that has nothing to do with that.
No.
This was happening before you, did you try putting mute into it, Nick?
So yeah, my mute code is here.
Checkbox mute. So I don't see anything wrong with setting the source like that and then playing the sound. Did anybody else do it that way where you set the source immediately before playing the sound?
Yes.
And it worked fine, yeah?
It could be, could it be with his mute that he's setting the interval for, I mean that's not how I did the mute.
Yeah.
And could it have to do with that interval?
That interval thing concerns me a little bit.
Yeah, why don't we remove that from the from there, Nick? So let's see, is that an if statement?
Yep.
Mine is blocked a little bit. No, I mean don't throw it out. Just pull it out of the pull that if statement out of it.
Or right click and disable it.
Yeah.
Or you can right click it and disable it. Yeah. You can keep it in there and just disable it. But now try running it without that code in there and see if that makes any difference. I don't see anything wrong with setting the source. In fact, I think that's the good way to good design. You don't need multiple sound components to play multiple sounds. You just need to change the source. Unless there's some kind of...
So yeah, I'm getting some sounds to play. It's just the mute which is not working. Totally not working. So I'll continue to fiddle with that on my own, and I appreciate the input from everyone. Thank you.
So it looks like the sound is working okay now?
The sound was working okay. It was just the mute. Well, not okay, but I was getting some sound. It's more so getting the mute to work.
Okay, so, all right, well, that's useful then. Well, how about other issues that people came up with either getting Pong to work or with the debugging problems?
Two things. Can you hear me okay? I'm not using a different mic.
Is that Liz?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So in the debugging, I ended up looking at the answers because I couldn't figure out what the third bug was.
It's been a while since I looked at those, so you're going to have to remind me what the bugs were.
Okay, so there was a bug that made the ball go up instead of down, which was just a random integer it was choosing. There was a bug that it had get edge greater than or equal to -1, so essentially the game stopped no matter what edge the ball hit.
Yep.
And then the third bug was where it was moving the ball when the game started. And I didn't really consider that a bug because it just, I feel like is preference. Like, do you want the ball to start in the center or do you want the ball to start on the left corner? So I was wondering what other people thought about that.
Hey Liz, the part I found on that one is that when you hit reset, it put it in one place, and when you hit start game, it was another. So I think that was sort of the issue, is that there was this weird jump when you hit, I think, stop game to reset or vice versa, because those two one was set to half the canvas and the other one wasn't, or something like that. Like one was set to 5.
Can someone share their code and we can just all look at it together, and you can explain how you solve the bugs, and then we can just chat about it? Maybe we could do one at a time. Someone do number 1 and then someone explain number 2.
Yeah, I would do. I don't have I'm on my Chromebook, so I don't actually have the ability to share screen. But I agree with M. Milch. I don't know your name, buddy. I'm sorry. But I had a thing where Matt. Yeah, I'm sorry. So it was the same sort of thing. I found that when you hit reset, the ball should stop, and it should like go to the top. I think that was the original Pong instructions. And then this one, it didn't stop when you hit reset. It just, like you said, it moved it to a different spot, and then it kept moving.
Anybody willing to share their code up there? Share their screen with the code on it. That debug exercise. Liz, why don't you share yours?
I just had to reload it because I deleted it. Hold on just a second.
I did mine with the reset. I can show that.
Okay.
I mean, they do have the answers on the teach side.
Oh, I didn't see that. I should have checked for the answers.
That takes all the fun out of it.
Hold on, I'm having a hard time finding my screen. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So for bug 3, I said the reset button is clicked. It's just basically missing that enable to false, so that it no longer moves, it stops. Otherwise, it continues to move.
On the reset button?
Mm-hmm. This is what I added.
What was there before?
This is what it looked like when it was, quote, the bug.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually missing the enabled, turning it to false, so the ball no longer continues to move.
Okay.
So during this part in here, you hit reset, and yet the ball's still bouncing.
I get it.
Afterwards,
Okay.
The ball stops bouncing.
So Liz, does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Yeah, so these are all examples of semantic errors, right? Where the app is doing something but not doing something correctly, or doing what you intend it to do. And one of the nice things about App Inventor, of course, is it reduces the amount of syntax errors you can have but it doesn't help you get rid of semantic error. That's where the real programming comes in.
So it's just that the ball moves to different places when start versus reset are hit. That's the bug.
Yeah. That's what I found.
Yeah, and also when you hit reset, the ball should stop moving, and
Okay.
it didn't stop moving. Yeah, and the block that was missing was the set, or was the enabled dot block
Yeah,
to false.
so it should have been false. Okay.
So I had an error when I ran the game, the one I created. I just was wondering, nothing major, but the ball dropped at exactly 270. So the ball dropped at 270, went straight up at 90, and then basically you couldn't make the ball bounce. I don't know if is there a way to fix that, or you just reset it and play again? It made for a very boring game if you did it that way.
You
It
could
might
change
be.
it to instead of, the opposite angle where it comes in, you could just make it the opposite angle that it comes in -1. And that little change would be able to offset that difference.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
Any questions about the enhancement problem? So did most of you watch the videos or read the written instructions for the Pong? Or both?
Videos.
Both. I did videos first, and then I went back to read it.
Okay.
Video.
So were there, so I think the enhancements included things like the video covered adding scorekeeping. That was one of the enhancements in the text version. Another enhancement was adding the sounds. It sounds like you folks were doing that.
keeping score also was the other one.
What was another one?
Keeping score, or having a scoreboard.
Having a scoreboard, right? Ending the game, having the ball stop when it hit the bottom of the, when it was missed by the paddle, right?
Yeah, that was the other one.
That was another one.
That's just
Turning the sound on and off. And were you all able to get that, the muting?
Yeah, so I did it the way that the video did it first, just with the checkbox, and then I tried to play around with it and use a notifier where it was just a sound button. So I created another button instead of a text box and just had sound. And then you click sound, a notifier came up that said, "Would you like to mute all sounds? Yes, no, cancel." Mm-hmm. And it everything else was the same except the notifier. It just wouldn't. It would. If I clicked yes to mute all the sounds, it would mute the first instance of a touch, and then every other time it either hit the bottom or hit the paddle, it made a sound. So I don't know why it would just mute one time. I mean, I parsed the code all. I mean, I was up till 1 o'clock doing it last night. Probably should have just slept on it, but.
So one way to do this is you can have an if-else statement, right? But before you play the sound, you check if the checkbox is checked.
Right.
If so, then you play the sound. Is it right? Because the checkbox is the sound on. But if you do that, then you've got to put that if-else everywhere you're going to be playing a sound. One of the questions on the written version is this problem can be solved using only one additional if or if-else block in your app. How would you do that with only one if-else block?
Wouldn't you have to create a procedure for it?
Who said that?
Josh.
I agree. Do others agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that how you solved it?
Yes. Yeah.
So this is actually another place where, okay, we're talking about the create task that you all worked on. We're going to be discussing some student work in that area. But so that the way we have to get students to talk about this is an example of using procedural abstraction to reduce the complexity of the program. And the complexity that you're reducing by using a procedure and one if else is you're encapsulating all the relevant code for playing sounds in a procedure in one place, so that if you change the way it works, you only have to change that one place, or if there's a bug in your code, you only have to go to that one place to fix the bug or find the bug, right? So this is the way we want students to start thinking about procedural abstraction and talking about it, because it relates directly to that question on the AP exam, where they have to identify some part of their app that uses abstraction to reduce complexity. So a satisfactory answer to that question is just, oh, look at this. I have a procedure here for playing sound. You call it whenever you want to play a sound. However, if the user has checked that they don't want sound played, then the procedure handles that case too. It's all done in one procedure, right? I mean, do you see, you all agree that that's a good lesson for students to have? And I think their tendency will not be to do that naturally. So it's something we have to sort of harp away on. Very good. Any other conversation about the Pong game? Anybody have problems that they want to tell us about?
I did it a little differently here. I didn't know we were supposed to use a checkbox, so I used a button.
Okay.
That and a Boolean variable that would just say if it was true, it would say enable sound or disable sound, and if it was false, then disable sound. I just changed the button text. But that was really the only difference that I did.
Yep. And then, but you could also then take that Boolean variable that you made and use that in your procedure rather than
rather than putting it in different spots.
Yeah. Same idea there. Yeah.
Same idea. Yeah.
Other ways that some of you do it some other way as well?
I have a question about how they showed it on the video when they were keeping score.
Mm-hmm.
Dave showed it as a way of creating a procedure to keep score, and I didn't see how that saved any time. So I was trying to think about, like, when a student's like, well, why wouldn't I just do it, have a global variable for score and then add one to that variable? Why am I putting in a procedure when it wasn't called in more than one spot?
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering if anybody had some justification for the use of that code, besides the fact they get more practice with procedures, but it seemed kind of unintuitive.
Well, I was looking at his procedure, and it had a parameter in it. It was something like update and show score or something.
Yeah.
And he had a parameter, and you could either the parameter was for passing in the score. So if you passed in 0, it would reset the score to 0. If you passed in score plus 1, when you hit the paddle, say, it would add 1 to the current score and then display that. So is that right? Do you recall that that's how it worked? I don't actually know if I have it. Can someone put up their code? Can you put up your code? Why don't you show us your code? Because I actually thought that was a somewhat unusual way to write that procedure myself. Does someone have that procedure coded the way showed in the video that they can put up?
Yeah. I just at first.
I have it.
But I was like, well, mine worked too. But
yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways to design that. There's lots of different ways to design it, and actually, in the written instructions, in the text version of it, the assumption was you weren't doing the procedure that way. The idea would be you'd do the addition right in the procedure rather than when you call the procedure. So Liz, can you put your screen share up? And there's always more than one way to do things in programming. So it's not that one way is necessarily right and another is not. Yeah, change in display score. So this new score is the value that's passed in, and notice that it's inside the procedure, he's resetting the global score to that new score and then displaying the global score. And I believe the procedure is called from several places in the app. It's called when you restart and reset the app, and it's called when you collide with the paddle, which is just, I think, just below the visible part of the screen there. Can you hit Control minus and just make it a little smaller? Yeah, so you see that collided with where you add 1 to the score and pass that in? I think that's a somewhat unusual way to do it, but it works nicely, and he's able to use the procedure for both updating the score with a new, as you hit the paddle, and also for resetting the score when you, as you do in reset button, where you pass in, just pass in 0, okay? So yeah, so that worked fine. But there's other ways to do this, right? You don't necessarily need a parameter. If you have a procedure called update score and you call it when you hit the paddle and it adds 1 to the score and then displays it. However, if you do it without a parameter, you won't be able to easily reset it using that procedure. Does everyone see why he's doing that?
Yeah, but Ralph, I feel like that is harder to read for the next programmer. You know, I feel like, okay, if you're just resetting something to 0, just do that. I mean, I think it's easier to have that procedure just update the score and then have a separate one that just says reset it to 0.
Yeah, Josh, Liz, can you share your screen again? Let's look together at another way to do this. Can you save your app as another one so we can just play around with it, if you don't mind? Yeah, so what Josh is suggesting is that, and I somewhat agree with that it is a little bit harder to understand what's going on with that than it might otherwise be. So if you don't want to use it to reset the score, but just to update and show the score, then what you could do is where you're using it to reset, like if you go to the reset procedure that you had, that reset, if you just set the global score to 0 there and get rid of the procedure. I don't mean the label, I mean the global variable. So what Josh is saying is, why not just set that to 0 like that? Is that right, Josh? And then there's other places that you'd have to do it. I think it was in the, is there a start button? Or is that? Was there somewhere else where it was being used to reset the score in the app? I can't.
It wasn't the start button, but I did my start button differently.
Okay. All right. So that's the only place that it's being done in your version of the app?
Yeah, because I did, like, people have 3 lives. So the start button, they didn't want to completely reset because I want them to, like, stop after they lose a life and they can just start from where they were.
So if you now get rid of the, in the procedure definition, if you get rid of the parameter, we're just playing around with code here. We're not gonna, okay. So now that causes bugs, but what you want to do is add 1 to the new score, add 1 to the global score instead of setting it to new score in the procedure. So that's the block you want to put in the procedure. Take the blue one that you just had and replace new score with that. Oh, but you want to also set the global score to global score plus 1. Yeah, and then just display the global, just set the text to the global score after that. Otherwise, you'd be adding a 2 to it, I think. So get rid of the plus 1 there. Yeah, just right. Okay. So now this procedure has changed to it just adds 1 to the score and displays it. And when you want to reset the score, you just have to set the global score to 0. So this is another way to do this that's perfectly acceptable, and that I'm more used to seeing and more used to doing it that way myself. So that's what you're suggesting, Josh?
Yep, that's about right.
Yeah, I think you're right that that's a bit more readable when you look at that. When you look at that procedure, it's a bit more easy to understand than the original one that we had there. Do others agree?
I mean, this goes back to that when we did logo in class, I had the same question, because when you looked at mine and my partners, you said, well, you could proceduralize it more. And my thought was, why would I proceduralize it? I'm only doing it once. And to me, this is the same thing. I'm only changing that score in one spot. So to me, I wouldn't want to even proceduralize it. And my understanding was that you would prefer proceduralized, because then you can give it a name so that the next person who reads it, that may be clearer if they have a name rather than seeing the 2 steps.
Yeah.
I mean, so to me, it's redundant to have the procedure even, but I understand what you're doing.
You know, maybe that's why Dave did it that way, because in his case, you had to call the procedure 3 times. Once in the start button, once in the reset button, and once when you hit the paddle, right?
Yeah, but really, it could have used 3 lines of code. So I mean, you can't argue that since he did reset the score to 0, he had to use the procedure.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Hold on.
I was saying, I see where he added the procedure because his procedure did 2 things, so it's reset it to 0. But really, if you count the lines of code, it's really the same on either way, right? So you have to reset the score to 0 on the reset button and on the start button. But you still add score. So I mean, I don't think we were saving any programming, and if the app was to expand, that he could justify using that procedure more. But I feel like this is one of those cases where it's almost 6 in one and half dozen in the other.
Yeah.
So if I had kids struggling with procedures, this would be a hard sell for me as a teacher, When I had kids struggling with procedures, and I taught App Inventor before, I always say, how many times have you copied and pasted your code? Because they learn to copy and paste pretty quick. And then I try and say, every time you copy and paste your code, if you do it more than twice, then why not use a procedure? And they tend to kind of catch up on it a little bit, those who are a little confused about what the purpose of a procedure is.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, when I was looking at this video, I was just kind of putting myself back in that position with kids that are struggling. I think it would be a hard sell. I can justify it and I can see it, but when I count the number of blocks in both ways, it's the same amount of code.
Yeah, well, don't forget, it's not just the number of blocks. It's
true.
Also the encapsulation of blocks in a named procedure. But I think I see your point, Kristen. And I think you're right. Some of that example might be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But it's still, I mean, if it clarifies the code to name something update and show the score so that when they look at the code where it's being called and it says update and change the score, so they know what that code is doing now.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, you might be able to justify it to them that way, even though adding one is a fairly minor thing to be doing, right? Right. So we're going to have better examples, I'm going to assume. But Liz, were you going to say something?
I was thinking about procedures in terms of generality. So if somebody else wanted to take your app and do something else with it, you now have this like set of tools that you've created for a future developer. I guess that's how I look at the procedures.
Yeah, and another thing about procedures and functions is it's very important that they have a clear purpose, right? And this one, I thought the way it was designed had a somewhat was doing more than one thing, right? It was resetting the score and also adding one to the score and displaying it. Resetting and showing it and adding one to it and showing it. But it wasn't being done in the procedure itself. It was being done in the call to the procedure. So I thought that was a little unusual. And it made it a little bit harder to understand. So if I had my druthers, I'd rather see a procedure for updating, like the one we wrote, updating and showing the score, that only does that. When you want to reset the score, you have either some other procedure if it's complicated or just a simple assignment like we had in revised that Josh suggested. But I mean, it's good to talk about things like this with the class, looking at code. I mean, I always wish students would really take pride in their code and want to make it beautiful, and awesome. But I think for the most part, my students just want to get it running. And if it runs once, they're satisfied. It may never run again, but that seems to make them happy. Try to get them to actually take pride in their code in terms of its design, and so on.
Well, one other enhancement here could have been speeding up the ball as you score increased, which I think would dovetail with the original, no? I don't know.
Yep, and if you wanted to do that, where would you do that? How would you do that? Did anybody do that?
I did that. So I have a procedure called increase level. So where the score modulo 5 is equal to 0.
Why don't you just show us your code and walk us through it?
Okay. Hold on. Let me share screen again. Okay. Let me move it down here. So when am I muted? Oh, no, sorry. For this increased level procedure. So if modulo score number divided by 5 is equal to 0, the global level increases. And then the ball speed increases by 1. If the paddle is wide enough, then the paddle width also changes.
Cool. So what that's doing is every time for every increment of 5 points, 5 hits, right, on the paddle, you bump up a level.
Yep.
So it doesn't get hard on every hit of the paddle, but every 5th hit.
Yep.
I actually like that as a requirement, possibly, because it's something they've already done in the past. With I forget what it was. It was the other one we did where there were levels, and we talked about how it could change the score values. So it's kind of doubling back to the same thing and reapplying. And something like that is so commonly used. This would be kind of a nice way to sneak it in, and it should be something everybody should be able to do as a challenge because they've kind of already done it once. So if they even get confused on how to do it, you can turn the kid back into his previous work for that other game and say, well, what did we do in the other game when we increased on the levels?
Yep.
So you're having them go back into their previous work to look for answers in how to implement things in a newer code, which I think is a good habit for them to be able to go back to their own work, look at something and say, oh, this is kind of what I'm trying to do, and how can I apply it in this situation?
Did we use modulo in the previous solution? Do you remember?
I think some of us did. I don't know if everybody did. I don't recall exactly which one of the exercises it was either. So maybe somebody else remembers off the top of their head which exercise it was.
I think it was in the mole one, the Mashamole, whack-a-mole.
Yes, yeah, it was the whack-a-mole one.
Increasing the speed of the guy.
Yeah, so this is like the same principle. So again, reapplying that principle.
Yep. Yep, this is very nice. Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, we could add it in as another enhancement, but you guys could just make up your own enhancements too in the classroom. So, very nice, Liz.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I, while I have my code up, I was having an issue with, and I posted about it on the forum. But my paddle is not starting in the beginning or in the middle of where I want it to, essentially. So hold on, let me collapse everything out. So essentially, when I start the game, I have like a virtual screen that gives instructions. And so then there's this begin button, and the begin button hides, those things that give instructions and then shows everything else. And then I have this procedure called stop and center ball, which is my intention to kind of like set everything in the center, but it's not doing that. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
So where does it show up?
So it shows up, but it shows up, at the settings that I have on the designer side. But I want those settings on the designer side to essentially be irrelevant because this procedure should reset the ball.
I thought you said it was the paddle.
Yeah, you said it was.
It's both.
Oh, it's both.
Yeah, it's the paddle.
It doesn't look like you're offsetting for the size of the sprite because your origins are in the top lefts.
So hold on. So like let me talk about the procedure. So the begin button calls the stop and center ball. And then that procedure calls center paddle. And it moves the center paddle to the canvas width divided by 2 and then 30 pixels up from the height of the canvas.
So when it does the canvas width divided by 2, though, that's where it's going to place the top left-hand corner of that image. So you have to offset it by half of the width so that it shows up in the center because it's placing the origin at that XY coordinate.
Yeah. So that's true. So when I push the reset button, it does show it on the right-hand side of the screen. So I understand that. But it's not doing that at all.
Meaning it's not showing it, it's not showing up on the screen at all.
Yeah, and it's not showing up because I have it placed too low. I mean, it's there. But if I say set it at a Y of 100, right? So then it starts, higher up than I want it to. And then until, the player loses a life or it resets, it's at this weird level.
But my thought was maybe the paddle is there, but it's below the edge of the screen. So how have you situated your canvas with respect to the screen? Is it
go,
the canvas?
So the canvas, oh no, I just did that. Sorry. So if I take out these instructions and take out the begin button and then make these things visible. So there's
the canvas height is fill parent.
Mm-hmm.
So it means it goes all the way to the bottom of the screen, huh?
Mm-hmm.
There's no does your screen scroll? Looks like it has scroll bars.
Okay.
So my hunch is that it's there, but it's below the scroll area.
Yeah, so, and that's, again, you're right, it's there, like, there's the paddle, and so is the ball, and it's not that the not there is not what I'm worried about, it's that it's not going to where I want it to go. Does that make sense? So every time the screen starts up, I want the paddle to go to a particular spot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I click the reset button, it's doing that. But when
So
I
when
click,
you do the canvas height minus 30, I could be remembering wrong, but wouldn't that push it farther off the canvas? Because as you go down the canvas,
and I've
your
tested it.
height's negative.
No,
So shouldn't it be a plus 30?
no, because 0 is at the top left corner.
Yeah.
Correct. So as you go down, your y is actually negative.
No, your y is positive as you go down.
Okay, so this is flipped from a different software I use then. Okay.
So anyway, I'm having trouble figuring it out. Because when I push the reset button, let me see if here it is. Here's the reset button right here. It calls stop and center ball, resets the level, sets the global score, and sets all these lives back to visible. But I don't know. It's puzzling me.
Bugging you.
Yes.
Well, you're going to have to just keep working on that because we've looked at it and we don't see anything to be helpful.
Okay.
But you let us know when you figure it out, right? Okay. You'll reply to your own thread. You'll reply to your own thread when you get it figured out.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Did you try moving that call to the center up to the top before it starts moving?
Like up here?
Yeah.
No, I've not tried that. I've tried a lot of things, but I'll try that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's spend a few minutes talking about the upcoming Explore task, yeah? Which is going to be your work for Thursday, and I think I'm going to have to give you some homework on this one. So if you go to the pacing guide, let me share my screen now. Okay. Are you all seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so basically, Pauline has been working on this. Let's see, Explore 1 and 2. So this is for Thursday. So let me show you, let me click on this and show you what this looks like. You can also click on it on yours. So there are 2 Explore tasks. Explore 1 is a sort of a scaffolding exercise to get students ready for the real deal, which is the AP Explore task. And so it's not open-ended the way the real one is. The real one is the student has to pick their own innovation and write it up themselves. And this one, we're giving them an assignment to focus on the issue of phone monitoring apps as an innovation. So there's articles to read and apps to check out. So that's these apps over here. And then there's linked in here the description of the College Board's current Explore task prompts, right? So you saw something like this for the Create task, right? So this is what this is going to look like, okay? And I'm not going to go through it with you, but that's the College Board's prompts for the, how do I get out of here now? What did I do here? Oh,
yeah.
Click there. Yep. And then this is the rubric down here, the corresponding rubric for the Explore task. Okay, so you're going to want to be reviewing that. And similar to the rubric we had for the Create task. So that's Explore 1. And then if I go back to Explore 2, it's going to be even more compact. And this is the actual, and what's been taken out is any specific focus for their innovation. They have to pick their own innovation and work on the write-up of it according to the prompts, and then submit it. So submitting here, by the way, of course, is, and this was true for Explore 1, the student is submitting this to their portfolio as an assessment. And so you can count it as part of their grade in the course. You'll grade it and count it as, part of their course grade. But for the for the AP exam, in addition to submitting it to their portfolio for grading in the Mobile CSP course, they also need to follow the instructions that you'll be giving them in the spring for how to submit the write-up and for the college boards for the AP exam, okay? And so what you guys are going to be doing is you're not actually going to be doing this task. You're going to be assessing some student work. And I'll be sending you out some information on that, some samples that the College Board has put together. So what your exercise is going to be is to go through a couple of those samples and apply the rubric to it. And then we're going to discuss that on Thursday. Okay? So I'm going to be sending you out some instructions on that later after the Hangout.
Ralph, is this different than the 5 that are posted on the pacing guide now?
The 5 samples?
Yes.
No. Let me see, where is that? Yeah, Pauline, in fact, she just put that up there, right? Because I didn't see that earlier today.
So we're not doing Explore 1 or Explore 2, we're just reading through it?
You're going to, let's see, you're going to be scoring, two of these five samples.
Right, but if you scroll up, just to clarify, just so I'm on the same page. So we watch the webinar, we read the Explore 1, we read the Explore 2, and we grade 2 students' work? Is that it?
Basically, that's it, yep.
Okay.
And I just noticed that she posted that just now because it wasn't there just before we started. And then, then we're going to be discussing that on Thursday. Okay? So let me see, I might still mail you out this information sheet that I have that pulls it all together.
Do we pick any 2, or are you assigning us 2?
I think you can pick any 2. So it says here, using the grading rubric, teachers should then grade any 2 of the 5 samples. They should not grade the mobile CSP samples for this activity. Just review them. Teachers should post their grades and explanations. And Pauline has put up the form for you to post your grades, right? This form.
They're the mobile CSP samples, so we don't. Am I missing something?
I don't know. I don't see them either. Oh, I see. I have them on my sheet. They're not there. Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Okay.
You don't see them at all, so there's no danger of that.
With sample A through E, we're good.
Mm-hmm. As long as you grade 2 of those. This is by Thursday, right? And what we're going to do on Thursday is go over that and look at that together. And then basically the questions are things like, what questions do you have about how to implement this in the classroom? Some of which will be clear if you watch that video. So another thing is, I really like the way these 2 Explore tasks are described, and just want to let you know that we're going to be doing a similar thing with Create 1 and 2. Although for Create 1, we may actually have a somewhat more, we'll have some additional work for the student to do for Create 1 that won't be part of the Create 2. Create 2 will be entirely based on the College Board's requirements. Okay? So that's one change we're going to make. And I think you guys saw that there was some confusion between what you had to do to turn in your mobile CSP work versus what the College Board wanted. So any questions about that for Thursday? Well, one other change that I'm going to make is, I hope none of you have done the search algorithms yet, because I'm going to put a link to a new revised version of that. We are going to use a POGL activity for that instead of what's there now. So I'll change the link on the pacing guide for that. Okay? I'm going to stop sharing if there are no further questions about the pacing guide or the create explore tasks.
So Ralph, you going to send us the new to replace the search, or is that going to be on the student side?
Let me see. It's on the student side. Let me see. Maybe I can just do it right here. You see it down here at the bottom, 512. Basically, the main change is it uses a POGL activity instead of previous version. So I'm going to go to the pacing guide now. I'm going to go to the pacing guide and change this to the new one. And I'm going to say revised. So if you click on that, it should bring you to the new one. Yeah? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions about tomorrow? So tomorrow it looks like you have logo part 2 and you have the search algorithms and sorting algorithms lessons. So those are not programming lessons. Logo part 2 is some App Inventor, but searching and sorting algorithms is not. There's no programming involved in those. Okay.
Good stuff, Ralph. Thank you.
Any last thoughts? If not, then I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place.
Sounds good.
Bye, everyone. Someone sounds like they're cooking us dinner.
Thank you, Ralph.
All for veggies.
Thanks, Ralph.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How did it go, Andrew?
Good. All good.